to behind me to turn to dirt. I also spoke to the guy who basically spearheaded this whole operation, and he kind of put it in layman's terms for me, just how much dirt it took to cover this track. Take a listen.
You can imagine the size of a football field. It would be 23 foot tall and fill the entire football field as a cube. So if you were able to build it straight up all the way around a football field and go 23 foot high, that's how much dirt's in here.
What would you say would be the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to?
I have 40 cars on the track, so it's going to be, lap traffic is going to play a key role in the race.
Has there been any challenges because of COVID?
When you get a stadium that holds 160 and they only put 40 in it, yeah, there's a lot of empty seats, but hey, you gotta start walking.
Keep your 3 foot, 6 foot distance, and let's roll with it.
Who's your pick?
Kyle Larson.
Larson as well.
Kevin Harvick.
I think it's going to be Kyle Larson. Got to go with the dirt track guy.
And speaking of that dirt track, don't be shocked if you see people in the stands with goggles on, because they have to adjust as well as the drivers. They're also going to have these things they call gaiters. A lot of people have been wearing these as a mask during COVID as well. But if you want to catch this race, tune in at 3:30 on Fox on Sunday. Back to you, Will.
Will be. That's going to be exciting. Thank you, Ashley. As NASCAR heads to Bristol Motor Speedway, it will feature a unique family affair. Jessica and Stuart Friesen will be the first husband and wife duo in a NASCAR race since the early 90s, but they say once the checkered flag is waved, all bets are off. They'll be racing tonight in the Pinty's truck race, which is, of course, on dirt. You can catch all the action on Fox Sports 1. The dynamic duo joins me now. You're both familiar with dirt tracks. That'll be exciting for Bristol, for NASCAR for the first time in some time. But you two together on the track. Now, I know that, Jessica, you haven't been on the track for a little while. They took some time off, primarily a mom right now, but you're ready to get back on the track?
I'm ready. Our son's here with us, and he's loving it just as much as we are. So looking forward to getting back out there.
Now, did you two meet at the track, on the track? How did that work? Because I know you were both racers before you got married.
Yeah, for sure. We grew up in racing. I'm from Southern Ontario, grew up in the Niagara Falls area, and did a lot of racing in New York State in the Northeast, and met Jessica at, one of the tracks in New York in the early 2000s. And, we just kind of worked on our own careers, and we're both able to make a living in racing, and, just dated off and on, and finally kind of got our acts together about 2010, 11, and got married, built a house, had Parker, and, right. Here we are now. It's been a wild ride, but we've been, fortunate to drive for a bunch of great car owners and have great sponsors. And, right. It's been pretty cool. And this is kind of the ultimate experience for us right now.
Real quick, Stuart, you're the first husband-wife tandem to race in NASCAR since the early 90s. Once you're out there on the track, Stuart, are you going to have any problem bumping and grinding her, pushing her around a little bit? Or are you going to back off and let her, she's your wife?
That's a good question. We like to work together. Jess is very analytical on her setup, on the shocks and springs. We had a really good practice session yesterday where we dialed both trucks in and worked together. But once they wave the green flag and we're out there, kind of all bets are off. So I might go a little bit easier on her, but I know if she's got to move me out of the way, she's going to have no problem doing that.
No problem.
Any hesitation, Jessica? Any hesitation at all?
None.
Well, what about getting back on the track? It's been a little bit, but, how do you feel? Are you ready? Is this, any nervousness? You ready to drop right back in?
I'm ready. We've been able to run some big block modified races in the Northeast the last couple of years. Our son Parker was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at 1.5 years. So the last few years has been all about Parker and getting him ABA therapy. And we actually have Council for Autism Service Providers, the logo on the truck, just to try to help give them some awareness. And they're working on, raising awareness for ABA therapy. And that changed our lives and changed our son's life. And he's doing amazing. And he's here with us, and it's just a social gathering for him, and he's having a great time, and he loves it. Yeah. So now that, he's in a good place and he's doing amazing, where, I'm able to get back behind the wheel and to be able to do it at this stage and, this platform and do it as a family. It's amazing.
It's great to hear for your family, for fans of truck racing. It'll be fun to watch tonight. All right. Hope you guys can get after it.
An amazing Saturday.
Take care. See you tomorrow.
Have a great Saturday. Option quarterback, Will. Right there. Boom.
I don't know. Last time I dropped one on TV and people gave me a hard time.
Redeemed himself. Have a great Saturday.
You are looking live over Donna, Texas. This is a drone shot of the facility and the locale that those 19 Republican senators visited yesterday. We're going to be speaking later this show with one of the key senators there and the changes he says that need to be made and fast, and has some demands on the President of the United States maybe to come down and visit and see for himself. Now, in this particular and at this particular facility, better than 1,000 migrant minors are being housed. Altogether, 16,000 spread across a number of facilities, and the numbers we are getting show them rapidly rising. One study says by next week at this time, it could be 22,000. By May, the end of May, close to 30,000. We're also going to be speaking with the retired acting ICE director, Ron Vitello, on what to make of this. But first, we want to go to Mark Meredith with the president of Wilmington, Delaware, on what he is saying about this. Hey, Mark.
Neil, good morning to you. The White House says President Biden is regularly briefed by his immigration team about what's going on at the border. But this comes as those Republican senators you were just talking about were making it clear this issue isn't going anywhere. They want to keep it front and center of what's going on the border. Take a look at some video that Texas Senator Ted Cruz posted on his Twitter account last night. This comes after a tour on Friday where you can see that there appear to be hundreds of migrants into these Border Patrol facilities underneath some Mylar blankets simply resting there on the ground. The video came after Cruz and 18 other senators toured Border Patrol facilities. The senators say the tour really backs up what they've been saying all along as they've been sounding the alarm about what's going on the border for weeks.
The President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States need to do what we just did. They need to come down here, they need to listen, and they need to learn.
This week, President Biden tapped Vice President Harris to lead his administration's efforts to stem migration. The administration insists it's aware of what's going on, even with reports of migrants, some children, dying trying to cross into the country.
This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue where we're talking about people's lives, children's lives, and we're focused on working with anyone who wants to be a part of a solution to address the challenges we're facing.
As the team tries to decide how they're going to address those challenges, the Homeland Security Department shaking up an independent advisory council, putting in some new members eventually as a sign that they want to go in a different direction from years past. Still no word yet when President Biden or the vice president may go down to the border to see what's going on for themselves. But, Neil, there are even some reports that former President Trump may go down in the weeks or months ahead to see what's happening. But obviously, with so much attention from Republicans and even some Democrats about what's going on the border, Neil, this issue is not going away anytime soon. Neil.
No, you're right about that, my friend. Mark Meredith with the president of Wilmington, Delaware. A couple of other developments I want to keep you abreast of. These new studies that show the population of these migrant minors, to say nothing of migrants in general, is expected to balloon in the months ahead. We could be seeing up to 25,000 being held at the border and then moved on to different locales by the end of May. Ron Vitello is the retired acting ICE director, former chief of Border Patrol. Ron, great to have you back. This does seem like it's rapidly getting out of control. Just to move the existing migrant minors to new facilities we've already, determined to place them in. There's a similar crowd following them, and then following them, and then them. Where does this go?
This is quickly overwhelming the system. Like in these previous surges in 2014 and 2018, the conditions that bring a surge are the lack of a consequence for coming into the country and not being removed. If you come into the country and you're released inside of the United States, which many of these children will be, they're going to encourage others to come. And so it's just the beginning of the beginning. Those facilities are overwhelmed. Those pictures of those children is heartbreaking. I feel also for the workforce and their families in this situation. They've been dealing with this for several weeks. And there's nothing in the pipeline as it relates to rhetoric or changes in policy that's going to make this end. And so building and augmenting the capacity at the border is important, and they need to do that because they're behind the curve. But the shelter space at HHS, Congress has to resource that organization because, again, there's no end in sight to this. The solutions to end the surge have always been detention until removal. And that doesn't seem to be on the table right now.
Maybe you can help me just get some facts straight, if you don't mind, Rob. The president has claimed that this is, something that happens in every administration, that we get these spikes. He referred to the 31% spike we got in people, swarming to the border in 2019, and that something similar happened in the Obama administration and then during the Bush administration. Is that true? I do know we get these spikes, but this one seems pretty much timed with the election of Joe Biden and then his swearing in, which fostered this view that a more friendly face was coming into the White House. And even the Mexican president had said that that was a catalyst for this. But what do you think?
Well, it's true that in the early days of the Trump administration, starting in December and going through the spring of 2017, the opposite happened. People believed that there was going to be more enforcement at the border, that people were going to be detained and they were going to be removed. They figured it out in the spring, and then it started a surge then. But the same thing happened here, right? People believed that we were going to go soft on the border. The administration put out details of their immigration plan, and they also restricted interior enforcement to a very small number of circumstances. And so the word is out. We sent a signal to the people that are in this pipeline that if they make it with their children, there's a likelihood that they'll be released. If they come as children alone, they will absolutely be released in the United States. And that has always caused these kinds of surges and this kind of traffic at the border.
Let me ask you as well about a charge the Democrats have made that this really had its origins in funding that was cut by the Trump administration back in 2019 when $450 million that was set to go to Mexico and Point South was taken away. And then things got out of control. Again, the timeline, when I look at it, doesn't seem to jibe, but what's the real truth here?
Well, I know there's been a huge investment by the United States in the Northern Triangle, starting in the 2014-2015 surge. That was a program that was started to increase investment in those countries by private and then spurred on by U.S. dollars. But I looked around and did some research. It's very hard to find any evidence that that investment paid off in any way. And it certainly didn't prevent the surge in 2018, and it didn't prevent the surge that's ongoing right now. So it's important to have international cooperation. It's important for us to help the Northern Triangle as it relates to governance and anti-corruption activities. But it's not going to stop what's happening at the border today. It's not going to help the DHS personnel and their families deal with what the crisis that's in front of us right now.
All right, now these senators who visit this Donna, Texas facility, now we get estimates over how many are there right now, up to 4,000 we're told, but it can only accommodate, it's supposed to house tops 250. So to say it's crowded would be an understatement, and now more crowds are coming. We understand 18 to 22,000 children could cross the border next month, another 25,000 in May. Do those numbers make sense to you?
Well, again, there's nothing that's going to stop it. There's no way for us to get out from under where we are, and so you got to feel for the situation that people are in. They think that they know these children know that if they make it in the United States, they're going to be placed here somewhere in the country, and so there's no reason for them not to stay away. There's nothing in the pipeline. There's nothing in the rhetoric. There's no policy changes afoot that will abate this surge, and so we're going to continue to see large numbers, and we're going to continue to have that challenge. And I'm grateful that those senators went down there to bring everybody's attention to it.
All right, Ron, thank you for coming in on a Saturday. You always help us understand what's going on down there, and we appreciate that. Ron Dotella, the retired acting ICE director. We also want to let you know that Indiana Senator Ron, who was among the 19 Republicans who went to the border, will be our special guest in the next hour, get his in-person read of what he saw along the Rio Grande, because he said it was a sight to see, to put it mildly. In the meantime, we got Bob Kustak back with us, the Hill editor-in-chief. And Bob, we are learning right now that there are reports that Donald Trump wants to go to the border, see for himself what's going on there, and could get down there sooner than President Biden, who's talked about eventually getting down there, but hasn't signaled or scheduled anything. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a shrewd move by the former president, who's certainly thinking about another presidential bid. And this does put the White House in a tough position of when is Harris or Biden going to go? Are they going to get there before Trump? And not surprisingly, as Trump has been more public, doing more interviews, he's leaning into immigration, as are Republicans. So this is a real problem for the Democratic Party, who's gotten off to a pretty good start. Biden got off to a good start, got the COVID bill done. But this is a real controversdy.
You know, it depends on obviously what network you watch and how much coverage you get. I never like to get into that game, as you know, Bob, and nor do you, about whose bias is showing and all. But this is certainly a serious situation. We could play semantics all day, whether it's a crisis and all. But when you've got a facility that houses at best 250 or is meant to hold 250, and it's holding in at least 4,000, and you've got other facilities that have the same constraints that are holding thousands more, and thousands more coming, that sounds like an out-of-control problem.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, a lot of questions at the press conference were about immigration or the border. And I think that was good for the media to press the president. However, not enough journalists, I think, are pushing back on Biden's claim that this is just seasonal spikes. This happens every year. I mean, Neil, these are record numbers. And the fact that you mentioned it earlier, that the Mexican president said part of the reason is because Joe Biden is president. And there's some reporting out there that suggests this is what's going on. Now, I think the Biden administration is smart to say, and Biden himself, don't come. And they're taking out ads to say don't come. But if you're in a desperate situation for your family, you're coming to the land of the free and the land of opportunity. That's not going to stop you from heading to the U.S. border.
You know, I'm wondering, there's a separate crowd that says this is exactly what the administration wants and exactly what Democrats want, that their polling data suggests that there is widespread support for helping these people out, and it's not nearly as controversial as, you know, others are making it out to be, and that there will be a growing base of support to fix the problem once and for all with a more friendly immigration policy that a Joe Biden would lead. What do you make of that? Because I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I don't buy that. I just don't think this is a good thing for Democrats. It's a big distraction. The system is broken. I do think that, you know, the White House does lean into, hey, we're more humane. We're not breaking up families. However, these are cage-like facilities that are the same facilities that were around in the Trump administration and the Obama administration until they're transferred to HHS facilities. And unfortunately, this is a tragic situation because most of the migrants who are coming are teenagers or children. It used to be single men, and now it's changed. So this is a complicated situation. Congress should fix it, but they're just not the votes to do it.
All right, Bob, thank you very much. Great seeing you again, my friend. Bob Cusack, the Hill editor-in-chief, an uncanny read of these developments. And I want to tip my hat to Bob. Before this was escalating into the serious problem he was warning us to look at this because it was going to merge into something, and that is probably an understatement. All right, in the meantime here, looking at infrastructure. 2 trillion, 3 trillion? No. How about 10 trillion after this?
Who is USAA made for? It's made for him, a veteran who honorably served. And it's made for her. She's serving now. We also made USAA for military spouses and their kids. Become a member. Get an insurance quote today.
For an infrastructure package, maybe $3 trillion. Oh, please. Why not go big? Why not go really, really big? Try $10 trillion, a plan being concocted by a number of progressives to push infrastructure well into the next decade. Lauren Blanchard joins us now from Washington. Lauren, what are they talking about here?
Hey, Neil, go big or go home, right? Well, Democrats are eyeing their at least 2 years with executive and legislative control as a way to pass big bills, even as President Biden is touting his administration's passage of the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Now, a group of progressive Democrats wants to put their own big-ticket items forward. The Progressive Sunrise Movement is petitioning lawmakers to sign on to the Good Jobs for All pledge. It reads in part that lawmakers will work to pass legislation that, quote, invests $10 trillion over the next decade to create millions of union jobs, addressing the crises of climate change, economic inequality, and systematic racism. Also in the trillions, President Biden says his next major legislative priority is a $3 trillion infrastructure bill. The transportation secretary was in front of Congress to lay out their case, as Republicans are still angry about how Democrats pushed through a COVID relief bill with so many Democratic priorities.
Across the country, we face a $1 trillion backlog of needed repairs and improvements, with hundreds of billions of dollars in good projects already in the pipeline. We see other countries pulling ahead of us, with consequences for strategic and economic competition.
The transportation bill, I think, needs to be a transportation bill, not a Green New Deal. It needs to be about roads and bridges.
And President Biden is expected to roll out that infrastructure bill next week in Pittsburgh. Republicans believe the bill will be a Trojan horse for the tax hikes that will likely come with it because, Neil, someone has to pay for it.
Yeah, we always forget that little detail, don't we, Lauren? Thank you very much. Lauren Blanchard in our nation's capital, looking at these latest developments. Now, you might have heard that Lindsey Graham is open to spend some money on infrastructure, up to $2 trillion, but he not a penny over $2 trillion. Fellow Republican senator on whether he agrees with that. Not a penny over $2 trillion. Easier to use and all of that. Then you could almost justify the trillions of dollars they're looking to spend on it. $1 to $2 trillion. It could be closer to $3 trillion if Democrats have their way. Lindsey Graham, he has his way. I could see $1 to $2 trillion. Let's say Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas sits on the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, among others. Senator, where are you on this? It's very good to have you, by the way. Where are you on this and whether we should commit to infrastructure spending, and if so, up to $2 trillion, as Lindsey Graham seems to be open to?
Well, I would sure never want to argue with Lindsey Graham. He's one of the most entertaining people I've ever met. He should be called the Johnny Carson of the locker room. And we probably agree on the same goal here. But we've already borrowed $8 trillion from our grandchildren over the past couple of years. This is pretty scary. This last $2 trillion we just borrowed, I would have loved to spend that on infrastructure. But remember, the bill they're talking about is not an infrastructure bill. The Democrats, they should call this the grab your wallet bill, or this is going to be the raise your taxes bill. You know, my grandma told me that there was 3 things you could count on the Democrats to do: spend your money, raise your taxes, and increase your regulations. So I'm all for infrastructure. We got to figure out how to pay for it. And I just wish we would have prioritized infrastructure over some of these other issues. But the bill they're putting before us, a Trojan horse, and it's going to do all 3 of those things my grandma warned us about.
Well, I'm sure your grandmother was aware that Republicans were pretty good at least at one of those 3 things, spending money. So, you know, Republicans in the position now of questioning a lot of spending, considering all the spending and debt that built up under the prior administration. And to be fair, Senator, you and I talked about this before. That's been a bipartisan trend, Democrats, Republicans. So I'm just wondering now, especially when Lindsey Graham seemed to leave out the possibility of paying for this, in other words, raising taxes or anything like that, then are you open to that too? A $2 trillion plan, an infrastructure-only plan that doesn't call for raising taxes?
Well, look, I'd love to talk about an infrastructure plan. We have to figure out how to pay for it, though. And that's what the Democrats always leave out. I'm really not wanting to borrow a lot more money today. I think that the economy is recovering, but I'm very, very concerned about all their new rules or new regulations. I'm very concerned when they raise the taxes, they're going to kill the economy. You know, when pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in my lifetime, and I think that came about because we lowered people's taxes, we lowered regulations, and we lowered energy prices. So back when gasoline was $1.70 a gallon, having some type of a user fee, maybe we would have considered it. But now gasoline's already $3 a gallon, and we haven't seen even the tip of the iceberg here. So it's going to be a challenge how to pay for it.
You know, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg raised the possibility of a mileage tax, maybe owing to the fact that so many people are getting electric cars and the like, that a gas tax wouldn't even touch them. What do you think of that?
Well, like I said, I think it would have been much more palatable when gasoline was $1.70 a gallon. but now it's 3. It's on its way to 4 gallons. So that's going to be a challenge. At the same time, I know the roads and bridges of Kansas have never been in bigger disarray right now, and that there are huge infrastructure needs. It would have been so good to take the $2 trillion we just borrowed and invested it on infrastructure so the people we were borrowing it from could have used it. So, I'm all ears. I want to listen, but I just think it's challenging times that we've already added so much money to the national debt right now that I'm concerned about even raising taxes more, that could even kill the economy more. Ultimately, if you want strong roads, bridges, high-speed internet, all those things, good schools, a strong military, we need a strong economy. And that should be our focus right now, is getting this economy up and going before we borrow more money from our grandchildren.
Do you think, Senator, that spending money in this way on infrastructure, I believe the president cited that the U.S. ranks 85th on the list of countries and how much they spend on infrastructure per capita basis. I think it was that, and I might be wrong on the figures, and I didn't check his out, so I apologize. But that it will pay for itself over time. That's a line I hear a lot, that it will pay for itself. Will it?
Well, we may never know, because again, this bill is not about infrastructure. It's more the focus is on the Green New Deal, adding rules and regulations. So if we're spending more money to get a road and bridge through the permitting process than we do on the asphalt or the cement, it's never going to work out. So we need all those departments within the government functioning more efficiently. And truly shovel ready means shovel ready, as opposed to going through 10 years of permitting. So I think we need to get our house in order first. The potential is there, and I'd much rather people be building roads and bridges than paying them unemployment checks. But I really see unemployment in Kansas less than 4%. We're predicting a 6% GDP growth for the country. I think that it's better. The money is probably better spent at the local level rather than raising people's taxes to do this.
Senator Marshall, very good seeing you. Thank you, sir.
Neil, good to see you as well. Have a great Saturday.
You too. In the meantime, no good deed goes unpunished, right? Krispy Kreme had an offer that if you could prove that you had taken and gotten a vaccine shot, just 1 shot, 2 shot, whatever, they're going to give you a free donut. Then came the food police, and they're not happy with that offer. Krispy Kreme's CEO.
Have to vaccinate 70 to 85%, quote, in order to reach herd immunity. It's just not true.
I think what Dr. McCary is trying to say is that people who have been infected already by COVID-19 have a version of immunity also. There's very good evidence now that, surprisingly, being infected with the natural disease of COVID-19 doesn't provide as much immunity to getting infected a second time than the vaccine does. So even people who have had the disease ought to get vaccinated. And I'm sorry, I don't know why Dr. McCary finds it necessary to turn this into a personal vendetta, because that's not helping either. Let's just all get the data together and figure out how to get our nation on the right path.
All right. I don't know if it was a personal vendetta, but obviously I wanted to be fair to Dr. Marty McCary for him to come on and respond to what the NIH director was saying. Dr. Marty McCary at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, much more, best-selling author, on what he makes of that. Doctor, I was really just trying to stir the pot and get you in trouble. It seemed to work, but I mean, in all seriousness, the NIH director, much like Dr. Fauci, seems to be saying everybody's kind of on the same page, that the goal is eventually to get herd immunity, but that he does seem to side with the Dr. Fauci approach that could best be scored when we get 70 to 80% of the population vaccinated. So what do you think of that?
Well, Neil, I have enormous respect for Dr. Collins. His book, The Language of God, meant a lot to me as a young scientist. I think he's a wonderful person. It's good to have multiple points of view, though. We shouldn't function like a political party where everybody has to show their loyalty and support and stick to certain talking points. Science should be different. And on the data, vaccinated immunity may be better. We don't know. We've only had vaccinated people in this world for 300 days maximum. And the data on the reinfection rate on natural immunity is clear. It's about half of 1% to 1%, and a strong suggestion that reinfections are very mild. And we know that those immunosuppressed and with organ transplants may be at increased risk. So you get the vaccine, there's about a 5% chance you could get the infection. That's what a 95% efficacy means in the vaccine trials. You have the infection, there's less than a 1% chance of getting the infection. That's the data. Look, I want people to get vaccinated too, and vaccinated immunity is probably more durable in the long term. But for now, we could have had a different strategy recognizing the power of natural immunity.
You know, Doctor, if you think about it, 500 million people worldwide have been vaccinated. And it isn't proving the magic elixir, certainly in places like Europe, certainly in places like India and Brazil. And I'm just wondering if that says something, that you need more vaccinations, or at least higher percentages of them, to round the bend, to change the arc. What do you think?
So a UK study looked at healthcare workers that had COVID-19, and less than 1% got reinfected. That analysis was done 5 months later. You know, a lot of people talk about reinfections, but it's a little bit like Bigfoot. A lot of doctors say that they've seen a case, but when you look at the data, there's not a lot of data on showing that reinfections are more than 1%. Look, I think we're going to get into herd immunity from vaccinated immunity plus natural immunity.
What is your read of what's happening in some of these places? I think deaths have been averaging over 3,000 a day. In Brazil, in India, it's gotten so bad, but that this UN program where they were going to share vaccines with the world, India is concerned enough. We're going to keep them here, thank you, because we've got our own crisis. In Britain, they're talking about, you know, a 60-day extension of these edicts that have already drawn protests in London. What the heck's going on?
Well, these are largely unvaccinated areas. And if you look at Europe, what's happening is you have surges in areas where the vaccination rate is less than 11%. But the UK has done very well. If you look at their case numbers, you look at deaths and hospitalizations, they're all way down. The UK has now vaccinated about 55% of its population. I mean, that's incredible. And the reason is they took a delaying the second dose approach because the immune protection from that first dose is pretty good at 4 weeks. And so by delaying it 12 to 12 weeks, you accept very little risk, and you get a lot more people vaccinated when you're rationing a scarce supply. That's why the UK is doing so well.
How does the rollout look to you? I know this herd, immunity you argue for is happening as we speak. But if we're to hear about what's going on in some of these other locales, it's not universal. I'm just wondering if what's going on abroad, not to belabor the point, Doctor, could it come here? What could prompt something like that here?
Well, I think you have to be very humble as a scientist and be willing to abandon any projection. And I'm looking at this data right now, and guess what? There's a lot of cases, particularly among young people in the New York area and a little bit in the upper Midwest of the United States. And that's because there's a lot of pent-up giddy to get out there. There's a lot of young people who are doing whatever they're going to do. I think there's also a fair amount of mobility. You look at the Google mobility data, it's way up. And the vaccination and prior natural immunity rates are highly variable. On the other hand, you look at Los Angeles, cases are down 95%, and the positivity rate is down to 1.6%.
Doctor, finally, you're well aware, I'm sure, that former CDC Director Redfield is saying that he believes this all started with something escaping from that Wuhan lab in China a little more than a year ago. Dr. Fauci has argued he just doesn't say that as the source of this. Where are you on this, on how all of this started?
Well, Neil, I think when people who are politically appointed physicians leave office, they feel more liberated. Maybe anybody who leaves political office feels more liberated to speak honestly. And Dr. Redfield, I think, was saying what many physicians are thinking, and that is there's just too many things that just don't add up. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever know because it'll require cooperation from the Chinese government.
Doctor, thank you very, very much. Didn't mean to cause an international crisis with you, but anything I could do to foster a food fight, I'm all for, Doctor. So thank you very, very much. Good hearing you. All right, Dr. Marty Makary on all of this. You know, the fact is the vaccine push is on, and if some companies can sort of push that along, well, they're all in, especially what's going on at Krispy Kreme right now, that institute a new policy. If you can prove you've taken at least one dose of a vaccine, they'll give you a free donut. So it seemed like a perfectly good deal to me. I would just go into one Krispy Kreme after another repeatedly. You get thousands of donuts with the same proof. Anyway, what's happening now is the food police are going after Krispy Kreme, saying that this is actually advocating unhealthy behavior, that if you eat donuts all the time, you can get fat, as if. Anyway, I want to get the read on all of this from a guy who meant to do well. Mike Tattersall is the Krispy Kreme CEO. Mike, very good to have you. The food police are after you, Mike. They don't like what you seem to be advocating. But I think you did also say everything in moderation, right?
We have. I mean, you think about last year, we did this thing called Acts of Joy. You and I chatted about this about a year ago, when we opened up to the healthcare industry and they could get any donut, as many as they wanted any time. We gave away 30 million donuts last year in the U.S. So, when people make a choice, as America gets a hold of the pandemic, and it's a personal choice people make, they look for, if there's a treat that they can get and we can serve it, it's great. I've been actually in the shops. So I was in Chicago and Louisville this week, and when folks would show me their CDC card, and I go, "You want that donut?" They're like, "Yes, sir." And they're really happy, and it's just a little treat, and it just shows the generosity of the brand. We are a sweet treat brand, and we get that.
Yeah. And I see where you're coming from, but people are very creative, right? They can come up with ways to take advantage of your good deed here. Do you get a lot of customers who go from Krispy Kreme to Krispy Kreme still showing that proof of a vaccine? I can't be the only one doing that.
We won't make up our programs for the folks that are going to try to beat the system. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. The generosity of the brand is what we really stand for.
Now back to the issue that obesity is a far bigger issue in this country. This was raised in the Washington Post today, and that you should be aware of that. And they're lecturing you on that because however threatening you look at the virus, obesity kills tens of thousands more, and that your product leads to that, you say?
We're a donut, and our brand actually serves it primarily in dozens. We're a sweet treat. And it's shared. People mostly use a Krispy Kreme occasion, and they share it with their friends. And the average American visits a Krispy Kreme about 4 times a year. So I think we're okay there in moderation, like anything else. People will always want a sweet treat. They'll make their own judgment.
No, I think you're right about that. I just wanted to get your take on all of that because, no good deed goes unpunished. People can push it, but I'm going to warn Americans that you really shouldn't do what I've been doing and go from Krispy Kreme to Krispy Kreme because that's just not a good thing.
I'll be in the shop, so maybe I'll find you. I mean, I can tell you that, when I dropped off some donuts at the vaccination centers this week as well, they just love it. They're working hard, so
Absolutely.
At least we can is just help them out.
Well, I'm getting worried, Mike, because a lot of your stores have photos of me saying, "Have you seen this man?" And so we'll see what happens.
Have you gone to our
Mike Tattersfield, yeah.
Have you made it to the flagship
Krispy Kreme
in New York?
No, I haven't been to the flagship shop, but any way you can get me there, I'm there. So, Mike, thank you very, very much. All right. Thank you very much on this. Stick around. You are watching Cavuto Live. We'll have more of this. All right, Boulder authorities are still looking into what was behind the shooting in that grocery store that claimed at least 10 lives. Alicia Cunha has been piecing some new material together to give us an update where things stand. Alicia.
Hi, Neil. 167 individuals from 26 law enforcement agencies have been working this case for more than 3,000 hours combined. And so far, what they still don't have is the answer to a question that is haunting them.
But like the rest of the community, we too want to know why that King Soopers, why Boulder, why Monday. And unfortunately, at this time, we still don't have those answers.
Now, the suspect lives about 20 miles from the King Soopers, where he is accused of shooting 10 people inside and outside of that grocery store on Monday. At a news conference Friday, Boulder's police chief said the suspect purchased the Ruger AR-566 pistol used in the shooting legally at an Arvada, Colorado gun store. The district attorney for Boulder County says in addition to the 10 counts of first-degree murder and the 1 count of attempted murder on a police officer, more charges are coming for 21-year-old Ahmad Al-Aliwi Alisa, who made his first court appearance on Thursday. He has not entered a plea yet, and his defense attorney was granted a request to delay upcoming proceedings by at least 2 months, telling the judge that attorneys need time to assess the nature and depth of their client's mental illness. They did not provide additional information on that. And take a look at this. A growing memorial on Boulder police officer Eric Talley's vehicle. Talley was the first to respond to the 911 calls from the King Soopers and was killed in the line of duty. His funeral is scheduled for Tuesday morning, and it will stream online for those who want to observe. Neil, again, Officer Talley leaves behind a wife and 7 kids. Neil.
Alicia, thank you very, very much. Alicia Cunha in Denver, monitoring all of that. You might have heard that there are some common themes and streams of information we're getting on the alleged assailant here, including his behavior and his family's behavior in the weeks and months before. Stop me if you've heard these same stories with other attackers after this.